Stop stressing and it'll just happen. Why don't you just go on a vacation and then you'll get pregnant? Why don't you just have a few glasses of wine? That's what I did. Well, let me tell you what I did. I went to a party and I got trashed, and that's how I got pregnant. Who has heard this type of advice before? Isn't it super helpful? Not. But when it comes to stress, it is the most annoying advice that's just kind of true. God designed your body for fertility, but when the journey to parenthood feels like a heartbreaking mystery, it's so easy to feel lost. I'm Dr. Trisha, a nurse practitioner and fertility consultant who's been where you are. That's why I created Fertility by Design, where faith meets science to empower you with real solutions, holistic healing, and biblical encouragement. You are not alone. Your fertility is not broken. So let's walk this journey together. So let's dive into more about stress, the hormones behind stress, and what we can do to stop letting stress rule our lives. I am so glad you are with us today. Thanks for coming back for another episode of Fertility by Design. Today, we're going to dive into the hormone cortisol, which is our stress hormone. So many times we can be doing all the things perfectly, right? And we're checking every single box that we need to for our fertility journey, so we think, but sometimes the stress of all of those things and trying to be perfect all the time is actually what could be standing in our way all along. And we live in a world that encourages stress. Stress equals achievement, right? The more you have on your plate, the more you've accomplished. But when it comes to looking at a biblical worldview, rest is so important. Even God rested on the seventh day, right? But we don't live in a world that encourages rest. And so many of us have been trying to climb corporate ladders, and we're trying to keep up with everything at home. And then now we're trying to start a family, but we're trying to still do all the things and say yes, 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 yes. And it just becomes too much for our body. And what starts to happen is it starts to feel like there is a bear chasing us, because that is the way God designed us. Because at one point, a long time ago, bears would probably chase people. And so we needed these fight or flight responses to be able to escape a dangerous situation. The hormone cortisol is our stress hormone. Cortisol goes up when we are in an acute stressful situation. However, like I was saying, the way that our world is now, we are constantly living our life in fight or flight. I see this so often in so many clients where they've got a beautiful diet, they're doing high quality supplements, they've lived a very clean lifestyle, they've tried to live a toxin-free life, but they are still stressed to the max. They are really trying to continue living their life at 100 miles per hour at their job, at doing all of these things, at being perfect with their fertility journey, being perfect at work, being perfect at home, being a perfect wife, and do all the things. And they're just completely burnt out. So when I see this with clients, a lot of times I see very elevated cortisol, and then we see this picture of low progesterone. Low progesterone is going to affect the body's ability for implantation to happen, because progesterone is so important for that final layer for implantation to take place. And if we have a shortened luteal phase or our progesterone levels are suboptimal, this can cause a lot of issues. So this happens because cortisol and progesterone have the same precursor hormone. And if cortisol is high, it's going to steal from progesterone. So when our stress levels are high, our progesterone is probably going to be low. And this is something that is challenging to fix overnight. This is something I struggled with myself, and it took a couple of years to really heal from constant stress, and it's still a struggle. And I think it's important to note here too that we can't remove all stress from our lives. If you have to work, you have to work, right? But we can set better boundaries, can use the tools that are in the Lord's toolkit to manage our stress well and have good coping mechanisms versus poor coping mechanisms. Here's the other side of things that can happen though. And unfortunately, a lot of times symptoms are the same for high cortisol and low cortisol. Sometimes we hear all this like stuff about high cortisol, high cortisol, high cortisol. We can't just assume you have high cortisol and supplement according to that, because you may actually have low cortisol. Your adrenals may be so taxed that they're like, nope, not doing it. And there's nothing happening. There's no production because they're so taxed out. So your cortisol is actually flatlined. And that's just prolonged stress over a long period of time. You've been stressed out for a long period of time, and your body has started to not be able to even produce the cortisol that it needs for a healthy diurnal pattern to function. And so these can have very similar symptoms. So when we're talking about high cortisol, a lot of times we can see some anxiety, we can see like a racing mind, we can see some of that central belly weight gain, that wired but tired feeling. Insomnia can be a piece of the puzzle. For low cortisol with adrenal fatigue, we can see just complete exhaustion, fatigue, low motivation, poor stress tolerance, salt cravings, dizziness. So those are some ways to differentiate, but sometimes we'll see some of those symptoms cross over and we'll think someone maybe has high cortisol, and what testing reveals is that they actually have low cortisol. So this is why testing can be a really important piece when it comes to assessing cortisol and your concerns of looking at that stress hormone. The best way to assess the cortisol hormone is through salivary cortisol testing, and this is through a 4-point pattern throughout the day. So a diurnal cortisol pattern. This helps us see what your cortisol levels are doing throughout the day. So are you high in the morning and slowly coming down throughout the day? Are you super high in the morning, have a complete crash, come back up in the evening? Seen it all. Are you just flatlined across the board? Are you low in the morning and actually really high in the evening? Lots of different ways that our cortisol can be dysregulated and present. And so it's really helpful to be able to have this testing to really tailor healing to what the adrenals really actually need. Here are 5 actionable tips that you can do for most types of dysregulation that are really going to move the needle in the right direction for you. The first one is going to be when you wake up, no screens for 30 minutes. The first light you want to be exposed to is natural light. If you can get yourself outside, bonus points if you don't have any shoes on and you ground in the grass for even 5 to 10 minutes before you do anything else on your day. That's awesome and great. Try to avoid that blue light exposure to be the first light that's hitting your face. Try to get direct or even indirect sunlight. If you can open your windows, if that's all you can do, great, do it. 2, balancing your blood sugar. So eating a high protein breakfast, balance it with a fat and some carbs, but not having naked carbs first thing in the morning. So not having just carbohydrates without paired with a protein or a fat. That's going to help prevent cortisol spikes mid-morning. Also, eating your breakfast prior to, don't shoot the messenger, okay? Prior to drinking your morning coffee. So many times, many of us will get up, myself included, and it doesn't make a huge difference for everyone, but the people who it does matter for, it makes a huge difference, okay? So drinking coffee on an empty stomach can really shoot up cortisol levels in the morning. So if we eat a protein forward meal and then drink our coffee, we can avoid that cortisol spike. 3, gentle movement versus high intensity movement. For someone who is having high cortisol levels, or even someone who's completely flatlined and taxed out, this person may benefit from more gentle exercises like walking, Pilates, stretching. If you are overtraining and doing long endurance or long HIIT training, you very well may be actually taxing everything more, the adrenals making it worse, shooting up cortisol more, and actually doing more harm than good. This really is important to lean into what your body is telling you. Are you feeling completely taxed after doing workouts like this? Do you feel wired but tired? Or maybe you don't have an issue with your cortisol and these workouts feel great. This is not a general across the board recommendation, This is why testing does matter, because we all feel stressed, but it doesn't mean we all have issues with our cortisol levels, right? So we need to test and make those recommendations, because the last thing we ever want someone to do is to stop working out and doing something that brings them joy, that helps release those endorphins and helps them feel better, just because someone on the internet told them, well, you shouldn't work out your body hard or do HIIT or do strength training because you're probably too stressed to do it and it's not good for your fertility. I hear this all the time. Oh, well, I stopped working out because I heard somebody said it wasn't good. And it's really a case by case situation. And we just need to know. We need to know what your case is. If you're interested in any testing like that, follow up with our team, because we'd be happy to talk to you more about those options as well. Number 4 is going to be nervous system regulation. So that's going to look like deep breathing, doing things like box breathing. Prayer, of course, is numero uno, right? Journaling, writing down what's going on, maybe even just 5 minutes a day of some of these nervous system regulation techniques, things that God has given us to be able to control our nervous system and jump from that fight or flight back into that feed and breathe state, or that sympathetic nervous system state to that parasympathetic nervous system state. Even just 5 minutes a day has been shown to be enough to completely reshape your stress response. I always say you have to practice this regularly throughout your day. On a regular basis, practice these techniques. They're not going to work in an acute situation. I always use the example of trying to escape a bear on a bicycle if you don't know how to ride a bicycle. I'm not really sure if a bear could probably still outrun a bicycle. I really don't know, but just bear with me, pun intended. So if you are trying to escape a bear on a bicycle, but you don't know how to ride a bicycle, it's not going to work very well. You're going to get eaten. If you know how to ride the bicycle, you've practiced riding the bicycle, now you have a much better chance of getting away from the bear when the acute situation comes. Same with breathing techniques. So if you're practicing them regularly in moments where maybe you're not super stressed, you're getting your reps in, and then as something stressful comes along, they're going to work. If you don't practice them and you have an acute stressful situation, maybe you get really bad news at your fertility appointment, and then you try to use these breathing techniques to calm yourself down, it's not going to work. It's not going to work because your body's like, I have no idea what are you trying to do right now? We've never done this before. I have no idea what you're doing. So that's the importance of practicing those things to really get that routine and get your reps in so that they work. The 5th actionable tip is connect and delegate. Isolation and perfectionism are both going to spike your cortisol. You are absolutely not meant to carry this alone. So get into a group, a support group, a group like we have, and let go of the perfectionism. Maybe you just need someone to give you the permission to let go of the perfectionism. Hi, that's me. Let go of the perfectionism. Just do the best that you can, but not to the detriment that you feel like you've stopped living your life, because that is not what the Lord wants for you in this fertility journey. He has something for you in the waiting, and it's not to make yourself suffer and not enjoy life anymore because you feel like you've just restricted yourself so much that it's all you can literally think about. So when we try to control everything, it's often becomes the very stressor that our body is fighting against. And let's just remember what Jesus says to us. He says, "Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." That's in Matthew 11:28, such a great scripture. You're not failing at anything. You're just carrying too much, and your body is really crying out for that peace. So if this is you and you've been feeling this way, we have ways to walk with you in this. I hope this podcast has blessed you and given you the permission that you need to just take rest, take a breath. But if you're ready to stop guessing and start healing with support and strategy, we have our Faith and Fertility Circle, where we are diving into all the fertility foundational topics that you need to hear. We are giving you personalized nourishment strategies and biblical encouragement. So we would love for you to join us. If you are looking for more one-on-one support, we would love to connect with you. We have a link to book a call in our show notes. So we would love to chat with you. Your hormones are really just seeking safety. Your body really wants peace to be able to prioritize pregnancy. And there is so much hope in that. So Let's go. Let's do this. Tell me how you're going to decrease your stress this week. What are you going to say no to? Or maybe you're just going to say, not right now, or that doesn't work for me. Those are all completely valid statements. If this episode has blessed you, share it with a friend, share it to your stories, reach out, let us know, give us a review. We would love to hear from you. We'll see you next week. That's it for today's episode of Fertility by Design. Subscribe so you never miss an episode, leave a review to help more couples find hope, and share this with a friend who needs encouragement on their fertility journey. Need even more support? Let's connect. Find me on Instagram at Trisha Zehrung for faith-filled fertility guidance, real solutions, and a community that just understands. Remember, your fertility is not broken. Your body is beautifully and wonderfully designed, and God's plan is always perfect. I'll see you next time.